Hi readers, I hope you're doing well today. I figure that while we are all at home not going to school, we might as well keep our brains busy by doing some reading out loud together. So today I'm going to be reading you a story and reviewing one of the reading skills that we learned long ago at the very beginning of the school year about characters. So for this activity, you're going to need a notebook or the graphic organizer attached to this lesson and something to write with. I'm going to give you a moment to pause and gather those supplies. Do you have all your stuff? Are you ready to go? Okay, here we go. So the story we're reading today is called Carrots by Bagdasarian. And what I want you to think about today is that characters are more than one way. We can expect them to be complicated and have many different traits. Before we read the story, let's talk about what that means. So I want you to think about your own life now. Think about your own family. Now that we're all kind of stuck at home, you might be learning some new things about your family members that you didn't know before. Is there a family member who is just complicated? I know in my life, when I was your age, I had some very complicated family members. What I mean is, just when you think you've got them figured out, kind of dialed in, you know how they are, they go ahead and do or say something that just doesn't fit. It's confusing, and you're like, what? I thought I knew you. An example of this from my own life would be one of my brothers. When I was your age, he's 5 years older than me, so I really looked up to him, and there would be times when he would be so sweet and want to hang out with me. He used to make me necklaces out of his fishing gear, the little lures and with fishing string, and I would wear them around, and I'd be like, oh man, this is so awesome, so fun to hang out with my brother. And then he would go off and do something crazy and bad or scary, like get in a fight or sneak smoking cigarettes behind my parents' back. And I'd be like, what? I thought I knew you. I didn't think that was part of who you were. But it is, because guess what? People are complicated. Do you have someone in your life who's kind of like that? Maybe not exactly like that, but in some kind of way? A lot of us do. So what we're going to look at today is in stories, how characters are also complicated, how they have both strengths and weaknesses. They have traits that are both likable and unlikable. As the reader, it is your job to notice those things because it helps us to understand the characters and the story at a much deeper level. So let's get started with Carrots by Bagdasarian. He knew his father yelled now and then, but usually he yelled for a good reason, and all he had done was hold on to the carrot sticks. He was sure he had held them at dinner before. He had always held on to them. And now the room was dark and he couldn't sleep. But what had he really done? Obviously, people weren't supposed to hold on to carrot sticks with one hand while they ate with the other. But why hadn't he heard about this before? Why hadn't someone told him? Usually they told you first, then they yelled. He had obviously made an enormous mistake. Okay, readers, I'm just going to pause right here really briefly. Just to summarize so far, I'm noticing that there's this protagonist or main character who seems to be puzzling over some confusing behavior from his father, right? I know I can relate to that because when I was your age, I was always puzzling over the behavior of my family members, my brothers, even my parents as well. Let's keep reading. What the hell are you doing? His father had said. Take the carrots out of your hand and put them on the plate. And suddenly, the room was silent, and his brothers and sisters looked down at their plates. He doesn't know, Ross, his mother had said, seemingly surprised herself by the outburst. Why doesn't he know? For Christ's sake, it's simple. Put the carrots on the plate, pick up a carrot, eat the carrot, then pick up another carrot. What the hell's wrong with him? And it was sad because it wasn't the old anger righting an actual wrong. It was something else that had nothing to do with carrots. And he wanted to look at his father, but he couldn't do it. He couldn't do anything but finish his meal and ask to be excused from the table. Whoa, readers, let's just pause for a second there and process that. This story just got real serious real fast. So if we're thinking about how characters are more than one way, we got to start by noticing their traits, right? So I want you to think about some words you might be able to use to describe this character's father. Okay, what words would you use to describe the father? I'm going to pause right here so that you can jot down your ideas in your notebook or on your graphic organizer. Did you get a few words jotted down? I did. The words I came up with were, he seems mean. He seems like an angry guy exploding at his kid at the dinner table for such a small thing as holding carrots. I might even say that he seems cruel. He's being really hurtful right now. Are those kind of like the words that you came up with? Okay, let's keep reading and see if this father is more than one way. And now it was 8 o'clock, and he was lying in his bed, and he still didn't know what had happened. He knew that from now on he would keep the carrots on the plate. He knew that he would always eat the carrot sticks one at a time. But he was still confused. And then he heard footsteps on the stairs, and he knew they were his father's footsteps. His father looked into the room. "Are you awake?" Even in the dark, he could feel the sweetness of his father's presence. He could hear it in his voice. "Yes," he said. His father came into the room, and he could feel the room diminish in size, become a playroom with play furniture and paper walls. His father's presence was so real, so strong, that everything around it seemed make-believe. "You know," his father said, sitting down on his brother's bed, "sometimes when I get angry at you, I'm really angry about other things. Sometimes something will happen in town or at the office, and instead of yelling about that, I yell about the carrots or the plates or something else. You understand that, don't you?" "Yes," he said, though he did not really understand anything except the feeling of his father's presence and the tenderness of his voice. Let's pause here for a second, readers. This story just took on a really different tone. Did you notice that? At first, we thought that the father seemed mean, angry, cruel, but I'm having some different ideas now. Are you? Will you take a moment and jot down some words that describes the father now? I'll be curious to see what words you came up with. I came up with the words loving and kind. I saw that the author used the word sweetness of his father's presence and tenderness of his voice. That makes me think that this is a really loving person, a really kind person. Let's keep reading. I'm going to back up a little. "Yes," he said, though he did not really understand anything except the feeling of his father's presence and the tenderness of his voice. "And you know that I love you even when I yell at you?" "Yes." "Good," his father said, leaning close to him and kissing him on the cheek. "Now go to sleep." The end. Wow. Talk about a complicated character, right? So now that we've got all these thoughts swirling around about what kind of person this dad is, we can put it together in a sentence. So I'm going to offer you the sentence starter. On one hand, on the other hand. So thinking about this dad and how he's complicated, we might say, on one hand, the father can be angry and mean, even cruel. On the other hand, he's a really loving and kind person. Do you see, readers, how that shows two sides of the father? That's what your job is today. In your independent reading book, I want you to notice those ways that the characters in your books are complicated. They're both likable and unlikable. They have both strengths and weaknesses. Noticing this in your books is going to help you to understand it on a deeper level. It's also going to help you to understand life on a deeper level, because I think most of us can relate to having someone in our life who is complicated in a similar kind of way. Please turn in your work today by sending it to me through Schoology or email. Happy reading!